On April 26, 1853, a massive war party descended upon a newly built colonial stronghold at Nanga Skrang. Before European powers set their sights on the interior of Borneo, the Iban people lived in large communal longhouses along the vast upriver network. They operated with complete autonomy, relying on the rivers for trade, travel, and sustenance. Among these independent communities was a highly respected leader named Libau Anak Ninken, better known to history as Rentap. His primary objective was simple: to protect his people's traditional way of life and ensure their absolute independence. But that total isolation made them a prime target. An expanding foreign empire was looking to bring the entire region under its control, and the upriver settlements stood directly in the way. That empire was represented by Sir James Brooke. Having recently established himself as the ruler of Sarawak, Brooke was determined to assert full colonial control over the deep interior. To justify moving his military forces into sovereign Iban territory, Brooke needed a legal pretext. He broadly labeled any independent indigenous community that resisted his authority as pirates, giving him the excuse to launch aggressive clearing operations. The consequences were immediate. Heavily armed columns of colonial soldiers began marching deep into the interior, tasked with breaking indigenous resistance by force. When Brooke's troops targeted a settlement, they systematically burned the longhouses to the ground. It was a calculated tactic designed to destroy their livelihoods and crush their morale. To solidify this campaign, Brooke constructed the Fort of James directly at Nanga Skrang. Looking at the river network, this position acted as a strategic chokehold, built specifically to monitor river traffic and block Rentap's influence from spreading downstream. With a military garrison now sitting on his doorstep, Rentap faced a binary choice: wait for his people's sovereignty to be completely erased, or launch a preemptive strike to dismantle the stronghold entirely. On April 26, 1853, Rentap chose the offensive. He called upon his loyalists and assembled a massive force of warriors. The sheer scale of the mobilization demonstrated exactly how much influence he commanded across the upriver communities. The war party used their deep knowledge of the river networks to their advantage. Navigating treacherous currents at high speed, they moved their fleet silently through the jungle, approaching Nanga Skrang entirely undetected. Rentap had coordinated a large-scale military operation, synchronizing a massive fleet to hit the fort's defensive weak points with overwhelming force. When Rentap's forces hit the fort, the breach was explosive. Hundreds of Iban warriors swarmed the perimeter defenses before the garrison could mount a proper counterattack. Inside, British officers William Brereton and Alan Lee scrambled to maintain order, completely shocked by the velocity and volume of the assault pouring over their walls. The fighting devolved instantly into brutal close-quarters combat. The tight confines of the wooden fort neutralized the British advantage in firearms, forcing a bloody hand-to-hand struggle. In the chaos, the battle reached a fatal turning point. Alan Lee was outmaneuvered and killed in direct combat by Leong, Rentap's own son-in-law. The loss of a commanding officer sent the remaining British forces into total disarray. With the fort severely compromised, Rentap secured a massive, undeniable psychological victory and pulled his forces back. The death of a British officer inside his own stronghold demonstrated a clear vulnerability in Brooke's frontier defenses, proving that even fortified European positions could be breached and overrun by Rentap's forces. Word of the humiliating defeat reached James Brooke, and his reaction was immediate and enraged. Brooke launched a disproportionate scorched earth retaliation. His forces swept through the upriver territories, systematically torching the longhouses of anyone suspected of harboring loyalty to Rentap. Rather than face superior European artillery in the open, Rentap executed a calculated withdrawal. He gathered his people and pulled back, moving his entire operation much deeper into the rugged interior. At Sungai Lang, Rentap transformed a settlement into a fortified war camp,
surrounding it with high wooden palisades and garrisoning hundreds of loyalist warriors. This retreat forced Brooke's army to extend their supply lines and fight entirely on Rentap's terms, navigating dense, hostile territory they simply did not understand. The attack on Nanga Skrang sent shockwaves across the region. Disparate indigenous groups who had previously fought alone began uniting under a shared banner of organized resistance against colonial rule. For the sheer audacity of striking the empire and surviving, his followers gave Rentap a title that would cement his legacy: Raja Ulu, the king of the upriver. Sarak now had 2 rulers. While James Brooke claimed authority through political treaties, the Raja Ulu held power through indigenous loyalty forged in actual combat. The 1853 attack marked the beginning of a prolonged escalation. Over the next 8 years, Brooke and Rentap would engage in a relentless war of attrition centered around a massive, elevated fortress at Bukit Sadok, a conflict that would force the Brooke regime to expend years of resources and manpower to eventually resolve.